I think I heard a ghost. Is there noises? What's
No,
happening?
I think we're good. That's my son whispering.
Ooh. Welcome to the Max and Vernon Project.
Yeah. Here we are. Here we are.
Here we are. Welcome. We're doing this podcast because we have no more podcasts left to share. So by default, we have to actually make a podcast, a new one. And believe it or not, people may think that Vernon and I spend every Monday and Thursday making podcasts, but we actually save them up because sometimes we forget to do podcasts. And so we need to build up a buffer. We're not the best at always planning it.
No, I get a text from Max today, and he goes, "Hey, man, we're actually out of podcasts. We probably should record some." So, of course, Max being Max, we're probably going to record, 7 of them tonight, all backed by books and research that he's currently reading up on.
Yes, they're all very well organized podcasts. As you all know, well, you guys don't know, but before we started recording this, the conversation went, "Hey, what do you want to talk about?" And I said, "Vernon, don't you worry about it."
Roads. Well, we're going. We don't need roads.
But I do want to bring up something that we had talked about before we started recording, and that is the doing of something, because on here we do talk about just doing things and the importance it is to push yourself in that direction. And this podcast is the epitome of just doing something. We are at the level of production that is equivalent to no more than a phone and a microphone. A phone as in something that record you, and a microphone as in something to catch your audio. And so it's been a fun blast because Vernon and I ultimately do this because we enjoy it. And that's something that we got to keep in mind, because when we do our planned recorded podcast, which very, very strategically organized, we've done in the past, they've been utter disasters. We don't even post them. There's been many podcasts that have been burned in a pile of other trashy podcast episodes that you never meet the public eye. And go ahead.
And there's also a couple that were accidentally deleted. So there's that. They were actually pretty damn good.
It was a very big library fire. A big podcast library fire. Just burned them all. Burn the boats. Just let her fly. But the point is, what I'm getting at is that when we just had to, you get to a point where we're making a podcast, and then we kind of get a little positive feedback and reinforcement, and then we try making it something totally different. And we had to stop ourselves in our tracks, because when we did this, not only was it very boring to actually do, it wasn't very good. And that's relatable to everything in the strength and conditioning world. And what I mean by that, well, just any world you're in, is that there's fads and trends. And Vernon kind of mentioned earlier that there's waves, and sometimes these waves create, what you can call a trend. And you had a quote. I don't even want to butcher it, so go ahead and say that quote. What was that quote you had?
It was, "If we all take the same path, the view never changes." And I think that's to me, it's very powerful, and it goes way past just strength and conditioning. It's just a way of looking at things, a way of thinking, honestly. But kind of going back to what you said about riding waves, I think there's kind of both sides, A wave is cool because it brings attention to a subject, and it allows people to kind of build on ideas and thoughts and whatnot. But then I think oftentimes, especially on social media, is we wait for waves. Like, we wait for the big name coach, whatever, to post about something. And now everyone wants to talk about external rotation in the shoulder, and everyone wants to talk about, the feet now. And I think it should be more of just what.
And landmines.
And landmines. I invented that. Shut the hell up.
Don't you say a word, Max.
That's trademark, landmark TM.
Landmark. Not even a landmine, it's a landmark.
Oh, landmark, damn it. My relationship box or whatever it was.
Relationship box, a landmark, and we had some other smelly salts.
Smelly salts.
Just add it to the pile
of nonsense. But it's being able to share things that you find are interesting and fun. And you hinted on this earlier with the podcast. It's, we do this because we enjoy it. You shouldn't feel like, well, so-and-so posted about the hips. Now I got to make sure I get my post tonight at 6 p.m. talking about the hips. It should be what you find enjoyable, what you find interesting, what you want to share. And like you said, we were talking about planning podcasts and like, what are we going to talk about and who are we going to have on next? And, that just wasn't our vibe. And we tried to force that and it didn't come out the way we thought.
No, and that sometimes happens with like the exercises you pick. For example, I've been messing around with a new exercise, which is like the safety bar front squat. It's very fun and enjoyable. But the reason why I did the front squat is because I had seen everyone else. I'd actually seen a couple people do the front squat, but I've seen a lot of people do like a Hatfield squat with a bar on your back, or even just a regular box squat with the safety bar. And for some reason, my anthropometrics, it just didn't work. So instead of addressing that and accepting it, I tried to be it. So I was like, okay, well, everyone else does it. This is, let me be a part of the safety bar squat club and do safety bar box squats. And for some reason, it just didn't feel right. Now, instead of actually looking at it objectively and then being, well, maybe if it's not working, I probably shouldn't keep doing this. I kept doing it.
I'm going to force this thing. I'm going to force it until it works.
Yeah, well, it's like you do it and you're like, oh, it kind of hurts, but it's not that bad. Like, anytime it says it kind of hurts, you should probably stop. Or you're making an excuse for the pain that it's giving you. Yeah. And then I went to a front squat version of it. And I really enjoyed it. And I had like exercise FOMO. Like I was like, why didn't I do this like 4 years ago? This causes no pain. I love it. It feels great. And that's the same thing that you're relating to.
Yeah, I mean that's a great point. So that's almost like taking a wave that you see coming, but not afraid to ride it differently. We don't have to follow the trends of what everyone's doing because, as we previously talked about in other podcasts, it's the context behind it. So why are they actually using a safety squat bar? Why are they doing it? And then for you, based off of your anthropometrics, you're like, man, I really like the concept of the loading of this, but it just doesn't work for me. But how can I use this tool? Because a tool, like we've previously talked about, can be used for multiple aspects. And you found a way to use it to take that wave in a different direction, which is awesome.
And with that too, it brings up the how we view something, right? And so it's like, oh, here's an exercise, and it works for some, but not everyone, because otherwise, if there's one exercise that worked for everybody, we'd all do it. Mm-hmm. And in that fad or that wave, machines have been poorly left behind. they have been treated as if they are, going to be the Skynet Terminator machines, so we shouldn't activate them or use them. Otherwise, the world will come to an end. But really, if you look at it, there are some hybrid machines, especially, that do a lot of good. There are some hack squats out there that the safety bar front squat remind me of. Like, there's a problem when I think a lot of exercises are trying to be modified to be more like machines. I don't mean it's bad in terms of like machines are great in my opinion, but I mean, like, why don't we just use a machine at that point? Why do I need to do a hand assisted squat? Why can't I just get a hack squat? Like, what's the point at this point?
So, that's the wave. Like, it's almost like in the strength and conditioning world, we bond in discrediting things. So the second someone says, "Oh, machines are the devil. You can't use those." Like, they load your tendons wrong and they put so much stress on your joints, then everyone else is like, "Oh my God, well, machines are bad. Like, I can't use machines. Like, what are we doing using machines?" Rather than thinking, why did they actually say that? What was the context behind it? Did they say that they hate machines because they don't have space in their gym for machines? Or machines are actually really freaking expensive, so you don't want to go buy a leg extension machine because it costs $4,000? Like, that's a reasonable reason to not have a machine, in my opinion. But actually not having it, it's just another tool. It's a luxury to have. Like, I don't think we should say that all machines are bad, because like you said, when you look at some movements, that's kind of what we're replicating. I just posted about knee health, and I was doing, I don't even know what you would call them, like a knee dive bomber or something, but literally it's a body weight leg extension exercise. Like, if you invert me and flip it upside down, that's what it is, really.
Yes, absolutely. And so you brought up some awesome points in that, right? So I love the idea of bonding to discredit, because there are times where I think if we just look at it purely objectively, a machine will serve better than free weights for a given exercise. Now, the nice thing about free weights is you can do so many exercises with it, right?
Yeah.
So a machine is probably at times better than better at one given exercise movement than free weights. That's the idea, right? It's so specialized, which is it's also con, right? It's a pro and a con. But it's interesting. Like if you had a machine that was really good at only trading one stock, right, making you lots of money with that one stock, no industry is going to discredit it. Like, oh, yep. It only makes you hundreds if it trades this stock, though. And for some reason, that's how machines have been treated in this strength and conditioning world. It's like, it's only amazing at loading your lower body. It cannot move laterally. Therefore, It sucks. It's like, well, you can say the financial aspect of it stinks, right? Because it's true. They cost a lot of money. But they are better at kind of the movement sometimes that we're actually do a better knee extension than a leg extension than a knee extension machine. I dare you.
For sure. Or something like a calf raise or a seated calf raise. I can do all the variations pretty much that I do with the athletes that I work with. But if I had one of those, I would probably use it. Or like a preacher curl machine. Like I would probably use that rather than having someone hunched over a bench with their arms bent over their knees trying to isolate a bicep when I had a machine that just did that task.
How about a very nice, stable, vertically loaded hack squat?
Yeah.
What? Yeah. There's actually research to support.
Uh-oh.
That a hack squat actually might be better than a back squat for overloading the lower body. Why? Because the limitation of your ability to back squat might be slightly imposed by the stability of the back squat.
I'll never forget when I heard, pretty sure it was Mike Boyle say that a back squat was a lower back exercise. And the first time I heard it, I was like, what? Like I was in college at this point. I mean, he's been in the game for who knows how long. And I was like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. There's no way it's a lower back exercise. But then I'm like, man, I've never back squatted and my legs gave out. It's like my chest is collapsing and I'm shooting my butt up trying to, lock out and create stability. But like you said, I have so many things, which is good, which is a pro to doing a free weight movement because there's so much more going on. But when you're chasing a specific adaptation, like you said with the hack squat, maybe there are pros that we should at least recognize that they bring to the table.
Machines aren't bad, just like how forks aren't bad. But forks are really bad at eating soup, being used to eat soup. So don't blame the fork because you decided to use a fork to eat soup, right? Like, or eat soup with a fork. It's not the fork's fault. So, like, don't blame the machine for you trying to use it inappropriately.
I mean, that's just a fantastic analogy.
Just failing miserably trying to eat this soup with my fork. So, and that's the mindset that gets accompanied with that of machine, even exercises in general, I'll call it. Right? We get into this. What are you trying to accomplish, right, with the exercise, and then actually looking at it, justifiable or educated justification as to why you might pick something versus the other.
Yeah, we've talked about this a couple times, I think, maybe once. Maybe that was one of our deleted episodes. I can't even. Maybe we should stop referencing past episodes, not knowing which of them got deleted.
Just listen to them all; you'll find out.
People are like, "You guys never talked about that." Actually, I apologize.
Sorry,
but the concept of, the context behind the exercise that you're choosing, the why behind it, where I know that we've talked in the past about picking an exercise and then having a reason behind it, and my reason might be completely different than your reason. That doesn't mean that either of our reasons are right or wrong without understanding the context behind it. I remember I gave a speech one time at a local college, and it's still one of my favorite slides to ever put on a presentation. Was I had 3 images of a squat, and it was one that was like she was barely squatting down. One was she was super deep, but her feet were completely, splayed open, knees wide. And the third one was like a beautiful front squat. And I said, hey, pull from the class, because it was a strength and conditioning class. And I said, hey, raise your hands and put up the number of the correct squat. And I front loaded the question. I knew the result I was going to get. And everyone held up a number 3. And I was like, see, that's the problem. You don't understand the context behind this squat and what's going on. Like the first person might have MS. The second person, may have, a shattered tibia, and that's their result of the movement. You don't know the context of going on, so you're just jumping in with what you see on face value. And the reason a coach may post an exercise on social media may not be the reason that you should institute it with your athletes.
Yeah, it's like the idea that you can go buy a book and read the program, but doesn't mean you know where the program came from. And so, like we always have said, context is king. And in that regards, context doesn't just relate to exercise and strength and conditioning, but context of your own development as a strength coach from an educational and business standpoint. What I mean by that, there is this at times unfortunate butting of heads, I guess maybe would be the right word, of people trying to make money in strength and conditioning, right? It's almost like frowned upon. How dare you try and feed your family? You must grind in the trenches forever, like kind of thing. And it's kind of an interesting mindset because there's not many professions that have that. And you're gonna hop in here and say something. Let me hear it real quick.
So this is an interesting topic, I guess, in my household because my wife's a photographer, and it just blows her mind that I'll have phone conversations with people, so many of them. And she'll be like, Vernon, why are you having all these Zoom calls and these Skype calls, and why are you just giving away information? I'm like, well, that's just how it is in coaching. Like, you just share and you share. And she was like, that's not how no other profession works. Like if someone was to contact me and go, hey, Clara, can you talk to me about how you set up your photography pricing or how you take your pictures in this lighting? She'll be like, of course, but it's going to cost this much for my time. And I'm like, man, if I was to say that in coaching, I would almost be scared of the backlash that I would get back from it.
And for consulting inquiries, please feel free to direct message Vernon. or Max Schmarz at Strong by Science or Vernon Griffith. Feel free. Who said that?
but it's true, and it's valuing your time, and that's something that she's been trying to push on me heavily. Is like, hey, you got to value your time. And I guess I'm getting off on a little soapbox, but the first time that I really thought about valuing my time was I was working with a high school, and it's a private school, and I was working with their football and basketball teams. And the head football coach there, Chris Scott, great dude, he was asked me to do something on the weekend one time. And I was like, my daughter has a softball tournament, but I may be able to make it type thing. And he was like, well, he kind of could tell that I shouldn't be there. I should be at my daughter's softball tournament. And I'll never forget when he asked me, well, how much do you want? And I was like, man, I don't know. Like, this is a good opportunity. Should I charge less so I can be there and get the exposure? And he said, well, also understand that not only am I paying for your experience, I'm paying for your time, and I'm paying you to be away from your family. And he was like, so how much is it going to cost you to be away from your family when your daughter has a softball tournament? And I was like, I literally paused and I said, hey man, I think I'm going to pass and I'm going to go to the softball tournament. And he was like, great choice. And there was a turning point of when I started valuing my time different.
That's a very powerful story for those, because it does outline what time means, because it does hold more than just the hour that is an hour on a weekend, an hour that you have spent other time with other people, opportunity cost. And that's something that as coaches is not discussed. Let's talk about like opportunity cost, for example. It's essentially like, if I were to do something, what am I losing elsewhere? And it's really important from a business standpoint because certain things have very low opportunity cost. Twitter, Instagram, trying to get yourself on a podcast, trying to write something. What has high opportunity cost? Going to conventions every weekend.
Yeah.
That's like 72 hours of time gone. Things that are the face-to-face connecting. Now, it depends on the person. But there's also an opportunity cost evaluation of you taking the time to meet someone and understanding the opportunity cost of that person to meet you. And so in that exchange, try and find ways to provide value, right? Don't just, can I connect? Because you got to respect the person's opportunity cost. Yes, you might be sacrificing time, but you're sacrificing time to help essentially yourself. That's okay. It's totally fine. I get it.
Yep.
But you got to understand that that person is now sacrificing time with what benefit? And yes, being a good person, right, is important, but like, isn't being a good person with that hour to your fiance or to whomever you'd be spending it with also a good person? So don't play the good person card with me. It doesn't make any sense.
Yep.
Oh, be a good person, Max. Come get coffee for an hour and a half, 2 hours. Can I be a good person and, hang out with my soon-to-be wife? Like,
Yep.
on a weekend, on the one time I had to hang out with them. So it's not being a bad person by not showing up. It's an opportunity cost. And that's not always addressed in the situation that we're in. And so in that topic of opportunity cost, there's another one that's return on investment. So ROI. Opportunity cost is what you could be giving up, and ROI is you've invested that time. What are you going to get back from it? And that's like when you go to a conference, what are you getting back from a conference? CEUs. That's fine. I get it. You need your CEUs. Wonderful return on investment because you have to do it. Are you connecting? Are you meeting people? Now, outside of that, what are some purchasable things like making this podcast? It cost me $24 a month to host the web space. That's a fine return on investment, in my opinion, because in the day, I have fun with it. Do I buy a gimbal, which stabilizes my video camera? Do I have that return on investment of filming myself for 15 minutes a day to build my exercise library that I eventually might use? All these are things that we need to think about. And as you, as in your profession, change in what you do, your return on investment might change. Think of your time like a stock, right? What can you get out of your time? What's the dividend of that time spent? And how are you spending it? It's very powerful because you can control a lot of that ROI based on how you build one thing to the next.
Well, and I mean, shit, Max, you brought up so many good points on that. I think, I guess a couple of them would be how coaches, that FOMO feeling, like that fear of missing out. Like if I don't go to this conference, I'm not going to get a connection. They feel that maybe that's their only way to get face to face with like some of these people. And then I guess when you get to these conferences, it's very forced. Like I've been to so many of them and I've had people like hand me business cards and just like almost like just try to, I had people hand me like what is it, their resume, and I'm like, dude, like that's not how any of this works. Like I've had some good mentors that have like, and obviously, I mean, it kind of goes without saying, but just be a good person. But you'd be surprised how far it would go just to like have a drink with someone, just talk with them. Like you're not selling yourself. And I think when you talk about that return on investment is people think of it in a term of selling, like they have to give their elevator pitch to someone. And I'm like, man, nothing genuine comes from that. Like just be a good person, and that good vibe attracts, I think, a better tribe.
Well, know how to hunt, right? If just because you're hungry doesn't mean you're going to eat. Like you need to be able to understand how that person got to where they are, what they have going on, because sometimes to hunt, it's not about bringing them food, but it's about joining their pack to help them in the long term. An example would be like, imagine you're in two different cities, or way back in the way back days, and you're trying to make a peace treaty with this other neighboring town. You wouldn't just show up and give them some food and hope they like you. Maybe there's an exchange of, agricultural trade or interest that might be, oh, you guys have lots of corn and I need some seed for corn, and you guys have lots of water. We'll trade you corn for water. And so, we have the ability to then build something together. And so it's not like I'm going to go kill an animal, right? That's not what hunting is always about, because there's gathering involved. There's maybe the hunting's not even the right word. It's more like, how do I plant my field so I have the opportunity to then reap the benefits down the line, because I don't just have one, single, I guess, crop growing, but I got multiple crops and I only need one for it to grow in a way that can be successful.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a pretty cool way to look at it. And then when it comes to that, I guess, return on investment that you're talking about from a business standpoint, or looking at it, an ROI, definitely a business, word or words, but the value that you have, and it's okay to say no. I think that's a big thing with most coaches is you're so eager for an opportunity that sometimes you say yes to things that or have too high of an opportunity cost that you brought up that would take away the opportunity for you to say yes to something that you really would want to take care of. You sign up for something that's going to take up 3 hours of your day in the evening, where now you could be using that time more productively to actually grow yourself, your business, your brand. But now you're consumed with working instead of building wealth on the backside, something that can continuously grow for you.
So here's an interesting anecdotal topic. So like today, I had invested some money in the stock market a while ago. Not much, just like a little bit here and there, small amounts, like $150.
Mm-hmm.
And I did it when things fell, because I was like, oh, I've always been told to invest when things go low because they'll probably come back up.
Yep.
And there's a point where again, it's like $100. So it's not like a large amount of money. Basically, I was betting, essentially.
Pretty much.
That's what it comes.
I mean,
that's to.
That's what they're all doing, really.
Basically. And so what happened was the things came back up to about like a 60% return. And I looked at it, and one of the hardest decisions I had to make was to sell my stock. Now, it was really bizarre because it wasn't much money, right? It was like I make $60 on it. And for some reason, in my brain, it was like, well, what if I held on to it to get more? What if I was waiting it could like blossom into something else? But really, I got a 60% return. Like, take your gains and leave. And what happens is sometimes we don't like to sell our stock at times. We like to keep holding on to it because there's two areas I've seen. There's the person who just gives away their stock. They buy it today and they sell it later this evening. And then there's the person who invest in themselves but never sell their stock, and then they crash and maybe they miss their wave or their opportunity. And so it's a very interesting feeling I had when I was selling it, because it was like so minor, but it was like, well, know why I did this in the first place. I didn't put $100 in hoping to make $1 million. Like, don't be an idiot.
Yeah. So I mean, shoot, we've done the same thing. I mean, if you have some spare cash, it's only smart to do. I bought like some stocks in like some space stuff and just things
Cool.
things that I think are fun, to be quite honest. Like, oh, this is cool. If I made, a couple extra $100 on a spaceship thing, then that's actually really cool.
Yeah.
But I think a very interesting word that you keep bringing up, and I'm gonna come back to it now, is the word value, and how we value not only ourselves personally, value our experience, value our time. And I just wanted to pose this to you. I guess a question is, I was talking to someone else about this and I was like, man, how are coaches going to recover from the pandemic? Not from a job standpoint, not from a, I guess, monetary standpoint, but from a standpoint of everything is for free now. Everything is, I got this free program, I got this free book, I got this free thing. And I'm like, man, if we're always selling ourselves of zero value, unless your ROI, like you said, your return on investment is creating, a bigger following or getting in touch with more people or getting in contact, then okay, that's a return on investment, like you said. But, as a profession, if we are, I wonder how that's going to change when it comes to like conferences and summits and things like that, because they're so free now.
Let me give you a quote my dad gave me. And it was because I bought the stocks, and like, again, it's the first time I've really, done more risk like stocks, not a mutual fund. Like
I normally spend all my money at Taco Bell.
yes, I don't really invest in my gains. But the idea was, he said, what do you call someone who tries and predict the stock market? I said, I don't know. Why? He goes, broke. All right, you don't, stupid. Like if you could predict it, you'd be worth a lot of money, but no one can predict it. And I thought that really resonated as a profession. Who do you call someone who thinks they can predict their own value? Well, that's someone, especially assuming you're going to sell at one time, is someone who's going to be broke. And I mean that in the sense that if you put all your eggs in one basket and you go, you know what, I'm going to spend the next, 30 days, right, next year writing my manifesto, my book, my I am who I am kind of story, and you put it out there and it flops. You've wasted a lot of time. And you and I have had this conversation before.
Oh yeah.
Right. From a business standpoint, understand what you're trying to accomplish. Yes, there's going to be a time where you might try and do something bigger and more grandiose, but you need to have some intelligence. You need to figure out what you're trying to accomplish. We looked at this podcast and we go, oh, do we buy lighting? Do we buy microphones? Do we buy Zoom? And we're like, dude, I'm not even going to listen to this shit anyway. Like, what the fuck are we trying to predict if it's going to be good? Like, we're a bunch of idiots here. Just that alone, we shouldn't even have a damn podcast.
Yeah, that's fucking true.
and so I talked to you about it and you're like, well, should I make a book? Should I make this? Should I make that? It's like, no, let's just make something that gives us intel as to what our current value might be. And if we're not as valuable as we think we are, which is fine, or maybe more valuable, how can I become more valuable? What skills can I acquire? What can I do to showcase my areas of interest, my areas of development, or areas that my expertise is the word I'm looking for. So that's kind of the way that I think coaches should think about it. And the reason why I say that, because it's like everyone's like, oh, I want my dream job, right? I want this one job. If you only have one job and one defined means of success, well, that means everything else is going to be a failure in your eyes unless you get to that point. So like you and I had talked about, like, why make 20 programs if we don't know anyone is going to even buy one program?
So, I mean, for those, if hopefully there's a couple people still listening to this at this point, but Max has helped me out quite a bit. So what Max is talking about, in my opinion, just what I'm hearing is having other people to help you as well with your value. I don't think some people realize the value that they have, either because you're a very humble person, you don't perceive yourself as an expert in something, or you don't perceive that you have value that can come, or some sort of monetary value that can come from what you have. And Max, oh my God, guys, I mean, for probably a year or two has been like, Vernon, you got to do this. You got to do this. And I'll never forget the first time he told me, and I was like, dude, no one cares. Like, no one is going to. And he was like, dude, people care. So I think for most people is getting out of that silo that they may live in and asking the people that follow you, not just your friends, but maybe the people that like comment on your stuff, or the people that have commented on our podcast or had questions about it or asked things about it. It's, hey, what do you like about it? What do you not like about it? What would you like to hear more of? Like, surprisingly, just asking people for information, they'll give you that information pretty damn candidly, and they're going to give it to you for free, because if they care about you, they're going to want you to succeed. So they're not going to give you bad information.
No, and think about it, like we buy books all the time, right? I have a marketing book next to me I'm looking for as I look down. And I value the guy's information.
Yep.
And if he sent me an email asking for what I want to hear next, well, I want to know what he knows. Like, please, I bought his next book. Why? Because I have a perceived value in him. And so what you as a person, you don't need to have perceived value to all the hundreds of strength coaches out there. Maybe you just have perceived value and you provide value to 40 or 50 people local who need someone to train with, who's an expert. Don't just think about value within a specific industry. Like, oh, how am I valuable to my peers? Well, your peers, you don't train your strength coaches. What are you talking about? You know what I mean? Like, that's not your value is not represented by how 150 or 300 people think you're worth. Because I know some really smart researchers who I think are valuable because I'm their consumer. But at the same time, I'm sure other researchers in that area are like, forget that dude. Like, I wouldn't listen to his stuff. But I'm like, I really like it. So I'm tuning in every time that guy's talking.
That is a an awesome point, because I think sometimes we get wrapped around who knows our name, and we forget that sometimes it's more important the people that already know your name. And it's like, oh, well, so and so follows me now, or so and so this, or I got to talk to so and so. Where literally the clients that you currently have, the value that you're providing to them, those are the people that are lining your pockets. Those are the people that are going to invest their money in you. Those are the people that their value is what's most important. And we chase validation instead of chasing the value that we have.
And yes, and there's a big difference, and that's a great way of putting it. People chase, I want someone to know who I am, versus focusing on. So put it this way: you train 30 clients. Mm-hmm. Of those 30 clients, probably all 30 of them have something that you yourself would pay to learn from.
Yep.
Right. And so, like, there are people I train who I'd pay for their marketing. I'd pay for their business mind. I'd pay to learn about how they, self-build things like chairs. Like, I would pay for their skills.
Yep.
You are someone with a skill. You are someone who is just like any other profession with a skill. But the issue is we judge ourselves. You think a plumber is concerned with another plumber thinks of them? You think he's being like, I shouldn't do this profession because that guy doesn't like my stuff, you know? Like, even though they're great at their job, you think they're sitting there being like, oh man, that other plumber really judges me. I use, an Allen wrench instead of, a screwdriver on something I screwed up on. You know what I mean? Like something that I wouldn't even know the difference of as being, incompetent handyman. But that's the thing. For some reason that happens in our field. But it's our field is not the same field that's going to be the one that you're providing all the value to. Ooh. There's educators within the field, but then there's actually you as the provider to people who aren't in the field, which is why you're valuable, because you're in the field itself that the people aren't in.
And now we're all in a simulation.
Yes.
Cut the cake open.
Aliens. Yes, but that's basically my rant and where that comes to an end there, I guess.
No, I love that, man. I think that's so true, that chasing validation versus understanding your value. And I think sometimes as strength coaches, we get so ingrained that like, I only care what strength coaches say and what strength coaches this and what strength coach this, that's X, Y, Z. Whereas when I hear like people that I don't know that are like a ballet instructor or a stay-at-home mom or a dad that drives a tractor 10 hours a day, and he's like, hey man, I just want to thank you for these movements. I've been doing them for my back and my back pain's gone. And I'm just like, holy crap, man. Like, that's value. And it's something I literally would have never thought of because I'm so worried about validation from some echelon that doesn't mean anything, that's never going to pay my family a dime. Whereas I got these real world people that you can actually change their lives, that are truly value you, that you're just not even paying attention to.
The difference between validation and value. That's a great way to put it. Speaking of value, we provide lots of value here. And one of the values that we provide
oh my God,
is to our sponsors. And I want to do a read-ins couple here before we head off. Patty's parchment paper. Looking to bake a cookie? Looking to bake some chicken? Come on in and grab your Patty's parchment paper at your local grocery store. Aisle 15 is where you'll find it. Stop by and use MVP Parchment to get 15% off 3 or more orders of parchment paper. If you decide to use a bulk order, use the code Party Parchment to get 25% off your exclusive parchment paper. Look out for us in the ads coming soon as we are releasing custom parchment paper designs. You want to cook it and bake it with your face on it? Soon to come. Happy to have you to join Patty's parchment paper.
Dude.
I have another one here I'd like to read.
Oh my God. Okay. Here we go.
This is Larry's Laser Pointer Palace. Please stop by Larry's Laser Pointer Palace and pick up your laser pointer. We carry them in all shapes and sizes. Do you have very large hands? Stop by and get an XL laser pointer ergonomically fit to fit your hand so you can point and make a statement. We also have now in stock the petite version too. Small hands, no problem. You can still command a room or a conference room with our laser pointer. Use MVP to the point to get 10% off your first purchase of laser pointers. That's Larry's Laser Pointers.
Thanks.
We have one last one here.
Oh my God.
Please stop by. Oh, okay. Sorry. Excuse me. I'll start from the top. Carol's Carousel Castle. Feel free to stop by Carol's Carousel Castle. We provide the largest number of carousels that you've probably rode as a child or as an adult at your local fair. Carol's Carousel Castle is now using a MVP podcast code of MVP Carousel to get 20% off any rental carousel you decide to do. Want to ride on a unicorn? Want to take a dive with a dolphin? We have the carousel that fits your needs. Stop on by Carol's Carousel Castle.
These just keep getting better and better, man. I'm thoroughly impressed.
I have never planned one.
Yeah.
These are all made up instantaneously.
Love it. All right.
I appreciate everyone that stuck around this long into this later. This is a long version. This is the extended version. Edits removed. This is the all 40 minutes worth.
This is all access pass right now.
Yes, and in the near future, we might be hosting a live podcast. So if you guys have questions and you guys don't remember the last one, that was an absolute debacle. This one will be much better. So be in tune. If you guys want to join, feel free to shoot us a direct message, specifically to Vernon's account, and we'll take care of there. All right, thanks, guys. Take care.
Later.